All right, what's up everybody? Scott Brio back again with another tutorial for you. Today we're gonna just be going over how to make your drums really pop and have a conversation. You know, when I first started making music, I definitely struggled with my drums. And you know, don't get me wrong, I could make drums, but they always kind of lacked the polish and the kind of bounce that a lot of the pros, a lot of my favorite artists had in their tracks. And I didn't quite understand what was missing. You know, I thought there was some sampler that I didn't have, or some processor or some piece of gear that I needed, but essentially I just didn't have the right technique. And you know, there are a lot of little ways that you can make your drums really pop and talk to each other. If things are just talking at each other and, you know, not talking to each other and talking back and forth, it's a little bit more boring to listen to. So when you do some of these things, what it does is it really keeps the listener's ear entertained over a longer period of time. And, you know, over the course of 3, 5, 6, 10 minutes for any given electronic music song, any bit of added expressiveness and interest is going to go a long ways. So I'm going to show you today how to do this, or at least how I do it on the Roland TR-8S, one of the best drum machines you can get. And I'm also going to show you how to do it in both Reason and Ableton, and then just Ableton alone with some of the stock plugins, and maybe a few third-party plugins. But you should be able to do this with all the stock plugins that come in Ableton, and probably, most likely, your own DAW, whatever it is you're using, you know, whether it's Reaper or Pro Tools or Logic or whatever. You just got to figure out how to do it. But you know, the most important thing is the technique here. And so if you just look at what I'm doing with the technique, you should be able to replicate this on your own. So let's swing over here to the TR-8S and I'll show you how I give my drums some movement. All right, so I've got a simple pattern here with a kick drum, a couple hats, and a snare. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the motion record feature to give our drums some life and kind of get them talking to each other, right? So what motion record does is it lets you add sweeps of the knobs over the course of the 16 steps. And while it's not a lot of time for there to be movement recorded, it actually does add a lot to the overall sound. So each part of your drum rhythm is kind of moving on its own. And when you do that across the whole drum mix and even across your whole song, it really makes things organic and it makes things really kind of come to life. So I'm going to start with the kick drum here. And you know, generally speaking, I don't add a ton of this to a kick drum because the kick drum is kind of the timekeeper of your song, and so you don't want your kick drum going too wild. That being said, a little bit of movement can be kind of interesting at times, and for the sake of the tutorial, I'll do it on this one so you can see it and hear it for yourself. So what we want to do is make sure that we have motion record on here, and we want to have record enabled. And so now as it's playing, we hit play and we can twist the knobs. They will record the movements that we do. Cool, so there's just a little bit, you know, the beginning gets a little bit shorter, the beginning of the kick is a little bit shorter, and then towards the end it's a little bit longer, and it just gives it some dynamic. So now let's go ahead with our snare. Do the same thing. Yeah, super easy, couldn't be easier. And our open hat. Nice, there we go. So again, we've got them kind of moving and talking to each other. And now if I turn motion record off, you'll be able to hear the fairly drastic difference between having the movement and not having the movement. So I mean, you can really hear that. You know, the open hat sizzles a little bit more. The kick drum and the snare kind of move and talk to each other, so I can't recommend doing this enough. And we're going to show you later how to do that in your DAW. For now, I want to bring in this part, which is just a little percussion hit. And I'm going to use the TR-8S's last step feature, which what that does is you can set how long any given sound will play. And so if we set it to be 15, what you're going to get is some polyrhythms, meaning that every other step, every other sound is going full 16 beats, and this one is going to go 15, which means that it'll be And then the TR-8S has a really cool feature called auto fill-in, which you can make your auto fill-ins, which are essentially just a turnaround for the drum patterns at the end of any given pattern you've got. So for this one, I can just hit. There we go. All right, now that we're in Ableton here, I've got Reason loaded up on a MIDI track, and I've got just one of their drum sequencers and the UMPF drum machines. Really great combo. I'm a huge fan of this combo. And I've just got a regular kick drum pattern loaded in here, so you can hear that, nothing special. But what I'm gonna start doing is start adding our other drum sounds, and then we're going to add the motion onto it in a couple different ways. Let's go ahead and add our snare in. And let's do our open hat. Pretty standard here. And let's do closed hat here, and then we'll do one here. Got this says clap, but I think it's actually more of a bass sound. Let's hear this. Do one here, do one there. Yep. Cool. So pretty standard. What we're gonna do is spice this up. So let's go ahead and throw an LFO Max for Live device down here. Go ahead and open up our Reason Rack plugin in Ableton. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this LFO tool to modulate these various hold parameters of the UMPF. And so you've got your hold here. You generally wanna add a little bit of release. And then what we want is the LFO to be doing something like this. But if we use the LFO, we won't have to use our mouse. It'll do it automatically. So by wiggling this, you can see down there in this section, you can see which one is moving. So you can hit map and then that one there. Cool. And now it's going a little too wild. You can see the big up and down LFO movement here. So let's go ahead and dial that back. You're going to be using these 4 parts here. We're going to use rate, depth, offset, and phase. So if we pull the depth down, it's going to make it less intense. And if we bring the offset back, it's gonna offset it to the left versus the right, so that's looking good. And for the snare, I wanna make it, I think 1 bar is probably gonna be good. Let's hear how that sounds. Okay, it still kind of sounds the same, so let's adjust the phase here. Maybe bring the depth up. Yeah, there we go. All right. Let's dial the depth back, bring the offset up. Cool, that's what we want right there. So we're getting 1 short snare, 1 longer snare. So let's hear that in the context of all the other drums. Nice. Cool. Let's go ahead and do that again. Let's do it to, let's add an LFO to the closed hat here. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and add a little bit of velocity in here to our closed hats, because that actually adds a lot of movement in and of itself. It's subtle, but it definitely makes a difference. And so now if we click over to our closed hat, that's the one we want, which is the top left over here. Let's hit map here, and there you go, boom. It's moving around all crazy. Dial the depth back. Let's listen to it while we do this. Bring the offset back. And let's make this one 3/4, 3/4. Bring the phase up. There we go. That's with it. And without it. So again, just adding lots of little bits of movement. And let's go ahead and group these. We can A and B them later. Let's go ahead and do it again. Let's add another one. And this time we're going to do the open hat. So let's figure out, okay, so it's the second one in the middle. Oh, what happened? There we go. Second one in the middle, there we go. Let's bring the depth down so it's not going so crazy. This one, we could just try leaving this one on hertz, which is going to make it a little bit more random. Let's see what that does. Okay, let's hear that. Yeah, I think that's good. We're getting an occasional short one, a couple long ones. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and change this to 15 out of 16. This is kind of like the last step on the TR-8S. And what it's going to do is it's going to give us 15 beats out of 16 before it restarts. So this is going to give us a little bit of a polyrhythm in there with our open hat. So let's hear how that sounds. And actually, before we do that, let's go ahead and switch it from forward to pendulum as well. And what this is going to do is it's going to make the playhead go forward for this track, hit 15, and then start playing backwards. So again, more polyrhythms here. Nice. All right, so we're gonna add one more here to this bass sound. Let's go ahead and rename that actually. All right, so that's our bass. Gonna add one more. Hopefully my computer doesn't freak out. It's going through a lot while we're recording here and adding all these LFOs. After you do all this, I recommend bouncing to audio, because these LFOs and going in and out with different programs, it takes a lot of CPU power. So you're gonna wanna make these changes and then bounce them to audio so that it won't, so that it'll free up your computer CPU. All right, so we're going for the bass here. So let's go ahead and wiggle this guy. Which one is that? Okay, bottom left. Let's hit map. There we go. It's going crazy. Let's bring the depth back. Let's dial this into to 1 bar. And let's bring the offset back. How does that sound? All right, let's go ahead and hear that in the mix. Cool. So again, we got a lot of movement going on there. And what I'm gonna do here is A and B it so you can hear it without it and then hear it with it. So here's it without. And here it is with it. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and close out of Reason. And what I'm going to do is we're going to add some additional hats with a VST plugin called Hats by AudioThing. This is a really great VST by AudioThing. It essentially is a synthesizer and sample player, and it lets you get just, you know, any kind of hat you could possibly want. You can add bits of random, you can add noise as well as effects. Really cheap, so you know, if you need something like this, I would definitely recommend going on their site to get it. So I've got a little pattern here, just nothing crazy, you know, simple hat. But what we want to do is apply the same LFO to our hats VST, and much like what we were doing in Reason, we're going to open this guy up and we're going to find what makes the hi-hat sound shorter or longer. And I'm pretty sure that it's this one. It's the short envelope decay. Yep. Cool. So now we're going to get LFO to do that movement for us. So it's down there. So I'm looking around my camera here, hit map. Boom, there it is. So it's flying away. So let's bring the depth down. Go ahead and change that to 1 bar. Bring the offset. Let's hear how that sounds. Yeah, that sounds good. So now, you know, if you want to hear it before and after. So again, pretty static. And then with it, you got movement. So go ahead and listen to that over the Reason drums. Nice. So at this point, we're sounding really good. All right, so another little trick here I want to show you is using an auto filter. And again, we're going to use another LFO. And what this is going to do is we're going to go ahead and group these. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of filter modulation over the top of this hi-hat. So the high frequency of the hi-hat are being kind of scooped out, you know, half a bar and then opened up half a bar. And this is going to create additional movement. So again, if we hit map and select that, boom, you got it going crazy. Bring the depth down. Let's bring the offset all the way up here so that we can get just the top end. We just want the very top of these hi-hats. So that looks good. I brought the phase up a little bit. Let's bring the depth down just a little bit. We just want a very minimal bit of movement, and we're gonna make this, let's try 1 bar. Let's try it. Let's hear what that sounds like. Nice. So it's subtle, but it's not that subtle. So here's with it off. With the LFO still going on the decay, and then you add the auto filter. Not too bad, right? All right, we got 1 more. We're gonna do a compressor. We're gonna use the entire signal from Reason as a sidechain key. So we want to turn on sidechain there after expanding it, and then go over here, select Reason. Normally you'd want to do this with just the kick, but I don't have everything stemmed out. So we're just going to use the entire signal from Reason. It'll work fine. So we can go ahead and listen to the signal. I like to click this over here versus this, so I can see the line here and drag it down. And so that's our threshold, you know, right before the dip goes away. And then the ratio knob becomes your amount knob, essentially. So if there's no ratio, there's no sidechain. And, you know, we're gonna add just a little bit. sounds really good. I mean, with the combination of the decay automation, the filter automation, and the sidechain compression, I mean, now things are really moving, sounding really organic. So I mean, this is really exciting. And once I found out how to do all this, I was like, mind blown. All right, so there you have it. That is how I add movement to my drum elements to get them talking between each other. You know, this is a really easy way just to keep things interesting through the entirety of your track. Make sure that your listeners are entertained and engaged from minute 1 to minute 3, 5, 6, 8, 10, 11, however long your track is. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you like what I'm doing here, please give me a like and a subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you want to support, you can either share this video, that helps a lot, or you can even go to my website, scottbrio.com. I've got a bunch of groove files made from the TR-8S to the DJS-1000 to my SU-700 sampler. Those are made for Ableton, so you can pop those into Ableton and get kind of a custom hardware groove sound with Ableton and your drums there. I also have some sample packs that will be coming out for, you know, mostly electronic music, probably some other genres. So again, all of them are pretty cheap, just a couple bucks, but it really does help to support this channel. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. I'm Scott Brio, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace out.